Adopt community. So anybody who happens to tune in, great. So this is a collaboration between Workshop Maybe and Adopt. This is an experiment that we're running. My goal is to teach the essentials of full stack web development in a unique way. I want to try to provide context more than all just the facts, because one of the experiences I've had a lot is I might read and understand documentation, but without the context, it's hard to know which parts of the documentation other people really use. I don't know if anybody else relates to that experience in any other field. But for me, I know it helps if somebody says, look, these are the rules and here's the ones that really matter. So that's what I'm going to try to do for you today. All right. We're going to run 4 of these consecutively and see how much we can accomplish over the next 4 weeks. The way I'm thinking of structuring these meetings, 1 hour of me showing you stuff, followed by an hour of Q&A. But please interrupt me anytime. All right. I don't want to waste anybody's time by going, too deep in one direction and making it inaccessible to somebody. All right. So in order to really make the best use of this time, make sure to stop me so we use it well. I'm going to record for at least the first hour, and then we can choose whether we want to leave it on for the Q&A. And for today, we're not going to do a ton with blockchain, but everything I'm showing you is building towards that. Okay, so I have my sights set on the ongoing rollout of Cardano. We want to be able to integrate those tools into a web development stack. And so today, what I really want to provide for you is like the shortest pathway I know towards having a basic stack. So a few things that we're going to do today, and if you did the starter kits, maybe you've seen some of these keywords already, but maybe you're familiar with the npm command. If you did install Node.js, you have npm installed now, okay? And npm it's a package manager. It stands for Node Package Manager, and this gives us access to all the great stuff that other developers have done, because the idea is you never want to have to start from scratch, okay? npm gives you access to ready-made resources that can save you a lot of time if you know how to use them well. It's not the only thing that does this job. There's other alternatives to npm. There's one called Yarn. There's others. You don't have to use package managers, but this is definitely the most popular one. We're also going to talk similarly about the import statement, which is the keyword in both JavaScript and CSS that allows you to get files to talk to each other, right? Whether we're talking about a web-based application or a standalone desktop app, none of these programs are one file, right? Any program that you use is actually a whole collection of files all working together. Import keyword allows us to do that, okay? So both of those words go along with this idea of using what we know about already. You'll hear these words, front end, back end, and database, right? The key thing for us as a community here is that we're all going to be drawn to different specialties, right? Kyle, for example, already has some front end experience, right? He's probably going to keep wanting to develop that. Some people might realize that you're much more into the visual design element of things, while somebody else might realize, whoa, this database stuff is really inspiring. When we talk about building teams and actually accomplishing things in the world, like we really hope to do over the next year or so, this is an important part of the conversation about building a team, right? Is people discovering what their real interests are, what they can contribute to a team. Okay, so instead of just using these 3 terms right here, I think they're a little bit overused. When you think about what an app does, you need data and information, right? That's why people go to websites. They want to learn something or find something out, right? So we have to serve that data up. That comes from a database, and it's piped through a backend that in some way might process that information, right? Then once we have information, we need a way for users to interact with it. So the word endpoints refers to what an API delivers to you. We're going to look at a specific API today, okay? And then between the front end, things that are happening on the user's computer screen, and the back end, which means logic that is invisible to the user but is happening based on their input, right? Both of those things need to be programmed so that the right things appear. And then, of course, there's pure front end design, which just has to do with arranging things on a web page so that it's beautiful and exciting and all that stuff to use. Okay, so we're going to touch a front end framework today, and talk a little bit about how the pieces fit together. We're not going to style anything. That's going to be everybody's homework, okay? Now, this idea of APIs, I'm sure you've seen this acronym before, even if you have no idea what it means, okay? Basically, what an API does is it sends data from one app to another, all right? And there's all sorts of different levels for APIs. This is a big business for a lot of organizations. So just because you know how an API works doesn't mean you have access to it. Some of them are purely free and wide open. Others are gated but free. So Twitter is an example of this. You have to go through an application process before you're allowed to use Twitter's API. Whereas others are fully paid services because they offer really highly valuable data. And obviously that's a really viable business, is to be a web-based service that provides data for others. And the preview here, of course, is that oracles on Cardano are going to be somewhat similar to this, right? An oracle is something that delivers data to the blockchain so that a dApp or a smart contract can function. How are we doing so far? Okay, that's the background knowledge. Okay, so here's what we're going to play with today. We're going to use React. So if you had a chance to look at the starter kit, maybe you saw me install React already. I'm going to model that for you in just a second. The way I'm going to install React today is actually through an NPM package called Create React App. And what this does is it makes it really easy to start building very quickly, because it takes care of some of the back end for you. You know, you don't have to set up the actual kind of IP routing that is happening invisibly behind a website, okay? Maybe you've seen this acronym JSON before. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. I'm going to show you an example of that. JavaScript is a Turing complete programming language that is used both on front ends and back ends. We're going to see examples of both of those over the next few weeks. React files are mostly formatted in JavaScript, but you'll see some exceptions to that in just a minute. And then specifically, we're going to look at JavaScript's map function today, because this is what allows you to take any size data set and render it to a page, okay? And then finally, we'll dip our toes into the blockchain by looking at some of these dandelion endpoints. These were made by a colleague of mine named Roberto. This is part of like the Gimbal Labs work that we're doing. So we'll just take a quick look at what this means. And what I'm hoping is if we cover these things today, this is then going to allow us to get into databases and to beginning to communicate with the blockchain over the next few weeks. So let's give this a try. I'm going to pull up Visual Studio on my screen. How's that look?
Good.
Yeah, that's good enough.
Okay. Yeah, this I can tell. Okay, so we don't have the ability. If you guys are on Restream right now, you can't just press full screen on this thing, huh? Okay. I'll read, just let me know if I need to zoom in on something at any time.
Zoom in yourself. Nice.
Okay, so this is Visual Studio Code. This is made by Microsoft. Does everybody have this downloaded already?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. And I have a few folders opened up here, but what I'm going to do. So I have two different files right here, two different directories right here. I'm going to make a new one called just day one. Oops. Day one, and then change over to it. Oh, damn it. I'm sorry. We'll call it day. Fine, whatever. So I'm in an empty directory. When I type ls and I get no files back, that means I'm in an empty directory. And I'm going to add this folder here. Let me just change the name of that because it's annoying. Whatever. I'll just use that. Okay. So all I did, is I created an empty folder there. This is the first action we're going to take today. I'm going to type npx create react app. And so the way this works, notice I didn't type npm. Long story short, npx is kind of like a power version of npm that does more for you. Okay, it's a longer answer than that, but for now, that's enough to get us started. Okay. So I type npx, then I type the name of the package I want to download, which is called create react app. And then I'm going to write a name for the app I'm building. I'm just going to call this example app. It doesn't matter what I call it, okay? Whatever name I give it, watch up here, you're going to see these folders and files start to appear. One of the reasons this takes a few minutes right now is it's downloading a lot of commonly used NPM modules so that they're kind of there and ready for us, okay? But the other reason is there's just a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background. And like I said, create React app means we don't have to worry about all those things. All right. So let me clear this out. So I typed ls a few minutes ago, which lists the files in this directory. And now if I type it again, you can see this example app folder. And if I change directory over to that folder, now I'm inside it. And you can see that the file names you're seeing here is the exact same as the directory structure you're seeing over here in VS Code, okay? And once you have create React app running, then we can type npm start. And we get this create React app up on our screen, okay? So if you're following along, great, you'll see this, but I don't assume everybody's following along right now because I know I'm just trying to like move as efficiently as possible. Okay. But any questions at this point?
No.
Cool, let's play with it then. All right, so npm start serves up this app, right? This website to our local host. We can talk more about how localhost and ports work eventually. But for now, right, all I have is at this web address, localhost port 3000, I have this app running. And the beauty of it is that if I go in to app.js here and I can just add some extra text right here. I save it, and those automatically render to the screen, right? So you can see it took a few minutes for Create React app to install, but then once I type npm start, I got this thing running, and now I am in a live development environment where every time I save my work, I'm going to be able to see something render here to the screen. Now, this thing comes with all sorts of stuff I don't need. For example, that logo right there, I'm not interested in that, okay? So I want to show you what happens when I just go into the file view, and I'm just going to delete this logo, okay? Logo.svg. Delete it. And now you can see right away in the terminal that my program now fails to compile, okay? So a few minutes ago, I had the green letters that said compiled successfully. I had my app running, but now it's broken, okay? And this is going to happen all the time. Every time you develop, you're gonna break something, okay? It's as natural as breathing. And so one of the developer's most important talents is to be able to read errors and try to figure out where they're sending you, okay? They're always logical because they're written by computers, okay? Sometimes they're just not written in language that's easy to understand, but you can always figure out what's going on if you follow this breadcrumb trail. And of course, the reason I'm getting this error right now is I just deleted a file that this website refers to, okay? I can see that app.js imports this logo from that location, right? The // means from the same directory as the one we're in, right? Where I was. We're looking for this file. And if all I do is I get rid of that import, it should at the very least, you see, it still didn't compile, but at least I got a different error. Okay, so, and this is what's going to happen. Often you're going to do something that breaks your app. You're going to start to fix it, but then you're not going to fix it all at once. So I know I'm on the right track because I have a different error now, but now it says go to line 8, and logo is not defined. Yeah, good. Let's just get rid of that, okay? And if I do, and I save this again, you see now I'm back to being compiled successfully. Now this is rendering to the page without the logo, okay? So all I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna get rid of everything. And if you've never seen HTML, actually, okay, let me take one more step back. This return statement, okay, everything from lines 5 to 22, the word return is part of the JavaScript language, but everything inside the return is HTML, okay? What React does is it's built inside of JS files, right? JavaScript files that can do things, but every one of these JavaScript files is going to have some HTML in it that it's serving up to the actual web page. I'm actually gonna get rid of everything, but I am gonna leave this HTML tag. This is a div tag with a class, and then a closing div tag here. If this idea of HTML tags is brand new to you, let's follow up, okay? I'm not gonna cover this too deeply right now, but just so you can kind of see, right? I've got an opening and closing div tag, an opening and closing header tag, And inside of these, I can write, for example, an H1, header. The number 1 is the biggest size of header. You can write 1 through 6 right there. Okay. And I can just type any words I want. I can save those, and there they are rendered to the screen. Okay. So you can see this is actually, for a site with only 2 words on it, this is actually styled pretty nicely, isn't it? We have a kind of classy, dark background color, a nice big bold font right here. And what I want you to know is this is not a default. The reason that this page looks as nice as it does is because we're still importing app.css. CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So this web page right here is actually getting some styling from a file in this directory called app.css. And if I open that up, I should be able to find, you see how it says class name app here and class name app header right here? I should be able to find those. Here's app, and here's app header in my CSS file, okay? And this is how import works. I have something going on in one document over here. This is a certain kind of document called CSS. Then in a different kind of document called a JavaScript file, right? I can import that information and I can use it somehow, right? So this is always going to be a common design structure. You're going to build something or create something in one file and then import it using a statement like this. And then depending on the context, use what you import, okay? And what I'm hoping to do is over each of the next 4 sessions, show you different ways to use the things that we might import into another file, okay? Watch what happens if I comment out this import, okay? So in JavaScript, a double slash is a comment. In my VS Code right here, it turns it green. Depending on what theme you have, it'll turn it a different color. But I'm going to save this, and now it is no longer importing app.css. So look at what the website looks like. Okay, that colored background went away. The font is black and is top and left justified. Okay, and hopefully this makes sense, because check it out. If I go back over to app.css, look, app header gives this thing a background color. Okay. It gives the font the color white, and then it does some other stuff. But even if I have no idea what I'm doing in this file, I can see the word center here a couple times. So I'm assuming somehow these CSS lines right here are what helped this very basic website at least look this much better, right? But also notice that when I get rid of the import, these class names right here, they don't break anything, okay? So that's a nice thing to know about HTML tags. If you give something a class or a class name inside of an HTML tag, it's okay if the app can't find that, right? So contrast that to the way the app broke when it couldn't find the logo. On the other hand, if it can't find a class, that's no worries, right? It'll style it if it knows how to, and if it can't find it, it'll just skip that. Okay. I'm gonna leave this, I'm gonna leave it styled for now, but if I get tired of that later, I might comment out app CSS again. But for now, we've got this. Okay. So there's something else I need to show you. Oh, sorry, Cole. Cole, I'm glad you found that chat window. Sorry to leave you hanging. I didn't see you there. All right, here on, I made this GitHub for this course. And earlier today, I posted this ideas.json file, okay? So you can download this now if you are following along, but I'm gonna show you how to use this right now, okay? So anytime I'm in a GitHub repository, actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna try to download this. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy and paste this right here, okay? And sorry, I know this is small. Okay, so this is a JSON file. We're going to look at it more closely in just a moment. But let me just copy this text right here. And I'm going to bring it over. And here's what I'm going to do. In my SRC folder, I'm going to create another folder called data. Okay. And then inside of that folder, I'm going to create a new file called ideas.json. I could give this file any name I want, but I have to give it the JSON extension if it's a JSON file. All right. Thanks, Cole. Yeah, it's so Cole. I think what I'm understanding is that if you look at it on YouTube, it's probably easier to see full screen. That's really funny. All right. So I just cut and pasted this from GitHub. I'm going to save it. Let's pause for a moment just to look at this directory structure right here. Okay, so everything in my project is here in this example app folder, okay? Inside this folder, there's 3 subfolders, and then there's these 5 files, okay? The README file tells you about create React app. Then there's these 2 package JSON files. One of them has the word lock in it. There's a git ignore file. We'll talk about this maybe 2 weeks from now when we talk a little bit more about GitHub. And then there's this linting cache. Linting is basically error detection. So this is a little information from Create React App about how to look for errors, okay? These are kind of just configuration files. We're actually gonna look at package JSON in just a second. Then we've got these 3 folders, okay? SRC is the source where you're going to do all of your work, okay? You're really not going to ever touch anything in node modules and public, okay? We'll talk more about public another time. And then node modules, notice that this is an extensive list of tools. And basically, whenever we use an npm command, this is what it's leaning on to do its work. Okay, so every time I type npm on my command line, it's accessing or installing something to this folder. All right, but let's play with this data. This is a JSON file right here. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And anytime you see these curly brackets in a file, you know that we're talking about a JavaScript object, okay? A curly brackets object. So first of all, this entire file has an object in it, right? This is one response that is fed by this file. Inside this JSON file, we have a series of keys which are in blue and on the left of the colons. And then we have values of those keys, right? And keys can be unique, right? So I only have one title here at the top of this object, and I have a hometown listed right here. But then I have more than one idea for what I want to do, okay? So then I've got these square brackets, and notice, right, this is the same computer key, right? So I've got curly brackets and square brackets. Curly brackets are objects. and then square brackets starting here and ending here are called arrays, okay? And so a really simple array might look like this. I could just write the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's an array. Okay. But I actually have an array of ideas, and each of my ideas is represented as an object within an object, okay? Each of these ideas has a numbered ID, and it has text. Again, this part is the key. This is the value. So the first item here, the key ID, the value is 1. The key text, the value is talk to some local businesses, right? Same key again, ID, value, text key, text value for each idea. We're going to use these in just a moment. How's the pace right now, guys? This okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Stop me if you have questions. All right. So now I have an object, and I don't know how to estimate the percentage of the internet that runs on JSON in some way, but like this is absolutely everywhere. This is how information is passed around online, is inside of objects like this. Okay. And it's outstanding that there's kind of this standardized format of keys and values inside of curly braces. You can see that each key and value pair is separated by a comma, right? It's actually fine to put a comma in the last, oh no, it's not. Okay, sometimes it is. Not in a pure JSON file. All right, so let me save this, because what I really want to do now is grab some of this information and render it in my app, right? I want to grab information from some external source and use it. So hopefully in your head, you're making a prediction right now about how we're going to do that. But of course, I can use the word import. Now, where am I in my directory structure, right? Because the app.js file is right here, right next to app.css in the same folder. But actually, ideas.json is in a subfolder. So I need to be careful when I make this next import. I want to import dot, which means this directory. And then I need to go into the folder called data. And then inside that folder, you notice that VS, this is why I love Visual Studio, is it fills in the blank for me. It says, look, there's only one file in that folder, so let's use it, right? So now I'm importing from the data folder this file called ideas.json, and now I can use it, okay? So let's do that. Gotta look here. Good. All right, I'm going to show you the most basic way to do that. First of all, key tag stands for paragraph. It makes text that's going to be smaller than the heading. Okay, so I'm going to write here is some text. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back over here, and of course, I can see my text. Notice, of course, the difference between H1 and a P tag. But I don't want to just write static text right here. I want this whatever is served up here to come dynamically from whatever data I'm serving to it. So let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Well, that file is called ideas. So what if I just call on the ideas and I want the title of it? All right, let's see. Oh shoot, that auto-completed. All right, so there's some things I like about Visual Studio, but some of the autocomplete stuff gets in the way sometimes. I'm going to show you how to break this thing for just a second. All right. Okay, so it says ideas is not defined on line 9. And the reason for that is that some imports are default. They're automatic, they work out. But anytime you're making your own custom import, you actually have to give it a variable name. So, right, just like in algebra, I can say that x equals 5, right, or in any programming language. And now I can use x as a 5 anywhere I want to. Up here, when I import something custom, I actually have to write a variable name for it. And then I have to use the keyword. Oh, no, sorry, not as. That's Haskell. I have to use the word from right here. Okay, so what I've done here is I've said, okay, I'm going to make a variable called ideas. And ideas is an instance of this information that's in this file here. And now what I just wrote right here should work. Let me save that. Yep, it compiled successfully. What was the content of title? It was workshop maybe ideas. So if I go over here, of course, that's what I see. Okay. Now notice this dot operator here, right? You know about a dot because you've surfed the internet before, right? Dots just tell us get this as a subset of this as a subset of that, okay? So in the ideas folder, drill down, or sorry, I shouldn't say folder. In the ideas file, drill down one level via this dot, and then find the key title and deliver the value of that key and render it on the page. Let's make this one a little bigger. Let's make this an H2. And under that, let's make an H3. Sorry. And what was the next name? Oh, I had hometown here with a capital T. So let me put in some more curly brackets. And I'm going to write ideas.hometown. Save that. And sure enough, workshop maybe ideas, Worcester, Massachusetts. So you can see that now I'm starting to have a dynamic web page that will update automatically when I just go through here and change this, right? It's a Newton max, right? So, right, if I want to include everybody here, I could just add that. Notice I added that to the JSON file, but now it goes on to the web page here. And what's beautiful about this is this allows us to separate concerns, right? You might have somebody on a team who's a specialist in the data and who doesn't want to have anything to do with design, right? So the person whose job it is to deliver information, they don't have to ever touch the React files. They can just open up the data files and change the information there, right? And likewise, somebody who's a talented developer, but who can't spell, you don't want them populating your ideas.json file, right? So you could leave it to them to do the design, and then again separate concerns. Okay. Now these curly brackets are different from these other curly brackets here, and even these ones here. You're going to see a lot of different uses for curly brackets. But notice in particular, I mentioned that the word return right here is part of the JavaScript language. Inside our return statement, right, inside these two parentheses, we have a bunch of HTML. HTML is not that much different from writing a Word document, okay? It really is. It's a markup language. HTML itself doesn't do anything, okay? It just presents information. So when we do want the HTML to be dynamic, we actually have to inject back into it some JavaScript. And that's what these curly brackets are doing right here, okay? We're using JavaScript to call on a JavaScript variable right here to bring in this information from here. Technically, it's called JSX. I'm not going to talk about what JSX is right now, but essentially it's a form of JavaScript that can be injected into HTML. And if you do decide to learn more about React on your own, you'll see that JSX is an essential component of that. All right, so we know how to get a top level data point from a JSON file. What about when we have a whole array? Okay, the way arrays work, I can make one here. Let's just say constant numbers is an array with the numbers 12, 14, 16, 18 in it. Okay. So all I've done here is I've made some random array. And you know what? I want to, in a paragraph, make one of those numbers appear on the page. Okay. And the way I do that, arrays count from 0. So the 12 right here, what we say is that the 12 is at index 0. Okay. 14 is at index 2, 3. Sorry. Nope. 14 is at index 1. And then 16 is at 2. And then 18 is at 3. So if I say, for example, numbers 3, note these square brackets here are saying where to go in the array, it should print an 18 to the page. And of course, that's what I see. If I write a number bigger than 3 right here, look, it's actually fine with that, but no data, no information renders to the page, right? So some errors are going to be compiling errors. They're going to give me the red letters here, but others, they're just not going to be noticed. So all that happens here is it renders the page. It looks for the 4th element in this array. There's nothing there, so it simply prints nothing. Okay. Now that's just not that interesting. What I really want is not to just print some random numbers, but what I want is I want to grab from ideas. What was that array called? Oh, it's called idea. Okay, let's try that. Ideas, idea. And let's just take the first one. Now notice I made the IDs of these start at 1, but remember that the index of an array starts at 0. So if I type brackets 0 here, let's see if this works. Okay. Oh, good. I got a warning because, yeah, I have this thing called numbers that's assigned but never used. Let's just get rid of that because I'm not going to use that again. Save again, and now I have no more warnings. What happens back over here? Okay, I broke it. All right, so sometimes you get a compiling error. Other times you give an array index that's out of bounds and it just makes nothing appear. Other times, and this is probably the worst kind, other times it's going to say compiled successfully, but you're going to end up with a white screen right here and have no idea what the heck is going on. Okay. So just know that's going to happen. This is a case where you'll probably end up going to like Google what's happening, or you'll go to Stack Overflow or ask a question, or come to this community right here, right? Bring your question to each other, and we'll have to try to help each other figure out and troubleshoot. But I just wanted to show you this flavor of error here because this is the worst kind. I have nothing appearing, and I have no freaking clue why, okay? So now that you've seen that, let's go one step deeper. The reason it's happening is because what's in this array at index 0 is actually an object, okay? There's another object here. And React, which we're building in right now, really doesn't like it when you try to print objects. When you try to print objects, I'm using the word object with a capital O, right? When you try to print a JavaScript object to the page, this is what's going to happen, okay? So I don't want the whole object. All I want is maybe just the ID. Let's see if that works, okay? So array index 0. From that object, extract the ID, and let's see if that works. And sure enough, it does. There's the ID right there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is still inside of these paragraph tags, I can, watch this. I'm just going to use any punctuation I want, like 2 question marks. Save that. Yeah, you can see the question marks there. And then I can do the same exact thing. Ideas.idea0. Remember what it was called? Text. Close the brackets. And there's my first idea. Okay. And usually I'm not going to use question marks like that. I'll probably use something like a colon is much more natural. How's that look? Right? Idea number 1, talk to local businesses. Maybe, oops. And maybe I don't need that one anymore because I have the ideas title. But maybe I do want a paragraph that says, I have some ideas. Okay, there we go. All right, so now the question becomes, well, if I don't know how many items are in an array, how do I deal with that? And for example, if I have 100 or 1,000 users, obviously I'm not going to write a line of code like this to represent everyone. I need to have a tool that allows me to represent, some indeterminate number of array entries, okay? And that's what map is for, okay? So that's what we're going to use right now. And just make sure, okay. So here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to keep this for a moment, but let's do this. So UL is the HTML tag that you use for making a list, and it stands for unordered list. Okay, so what I can do is I can type UL, and then inside of LI tags, I can type a series of list items, okay? LI stands for list item. And just to show you what this looks like, I can have these bullet points here. And actually this centering, I've reached the end of my patience with centering. I hate it. So you know what? I'm going to, like I threatened to do before, I'm going to get rid of app.css. And good. This feels a lot easier to deal with up here. Okay. And I just zoomed in to 200% right now, so you can see it on the screen. At 100%, it's tiny up here. Okay. Just so you know, that's just me zooming in on the web browser. Okay. So actually, yeah, this is helping my brain think a little bit better, that I'm not worried about that silly centered formatting anymore. But now you guys can see what an unordered list looks like. Unordered lists are also everywhere on the internet, and they're in places that you might not expect. So for example, even a horizontal navigation bar on a website is probably a list, okay? That's what's typically used for this sort of thing. So super common. Header tags are super common. Paragraph tags are incredibly common, as are UL and LI tags, okay? But again, I still haven't solved the problem of not knowing how many items are in this array, and I really don't want to write a separate list item for each one. So I am going to keep the UL tags. Okay? I do want to have a list. But what's going to go in that list? Well, first of all, I'm going to write some JavaScript inside these curly brackets. And inside of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the exact code I see right here, okay? I want to go into that ideas file that I imported here. And then I want to go into the idea object, which is an array. And then I'm going to call a method on that called map. Notice what's showing up on my screen right now. VS Code makes this helper box appear. It's another thing I really like about it. And it's actually showing me the structure of the data that's being fed to it from the ideas, right? It notices, oh, okay, when you import ideas.idea, that's giving you a set of IDs and text keys, okay? You also have some information about how map works. So this is why I'm really recommending VS Code to everybody, is that built into this program are tons of learning resources that are going to pop up in front of you as you go. Okay. All right, now map, all I'm going to do is show you what this looks like just so you know about it. And then you can either come back, watch this video, or go like really experiment with map a little bit on your own, okay? You're going to see this all the time. Any website that serves up some undefined amount of data, you have no idea how many users there are on Facebook, but we have to be able to manage them, right? We're going to be mapping information to the page constantly. All right. It would take a long time to explain everything I'm doing right here, but let's just do some of it. So what I'm going to do is take each item and I'm going to call it some variable. Okay. And just to prove to you how this works, I'm actually going to call it something, just so you know. I could type any word I want right here. There's nothing that this has to be. All right. What am I going to do with that something? Well, every item in the array, what I want to do is make a list item, like we saw a moment ago, right? I don't know how many somethings there are in this array, but however many there are, for each one, make a list item. And what's going to be in that list item? Well, it's going to be the value of that something dot text. Okay. So what this is saying is go through this array called idea, map it for each thing in that array, take that thing and put the text in a list item. Let's see if this works. Okay, there they are. There's my 4 text items. Okay, and if I added more, if there were 100 of them, this would have taken no more time than it did just now. Okay, and so that's why developers really love the map function right here. This is one of those essential tools that you're going to use all the time. Now, it's not giving me a warning, even though it should. Yeah, I'm going to show you this. Sometimes you might get a warning that says like list items need a key. Okay. And so all I'm going to do is write something.id. This is just, I'm not going to try to explain that right now, but just so you know, if you ever get a key warning, this is a way to fix that. And again, just to review, it doesn't matter what I write right here. So if I had used the letter I to represent each item in the list, that works just as well. Here's all those items showing up. Okay. Now, these items do have indexes, which is nice. Here, let me get rid of this because I don't need it anymore. So I could choose to print those indexes like I did in the paragraph before, but I can also just change these U's. U stands for unordered, but the letter O stands for ordered. If I change those ULs to OLs, now I will have a numbered list right here. How's everybody doing? Any questions? Anybody at burnout yet? Like it's I just talked for almost an hour straight. And
can you go back to the window that you were in before?
Yep.
I had a question, but I guess you must have made some modifications, and the code had changed from what it was before. Never mind.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Go back to that part of the video, right? And if there's a question, let's definitely follow up.
Right. Where was so the everything that's listed on the actual web page that this code is outputting, where is that referred to?
Great question. Okay. Yeah, Max, that's a perfect question. And that's what I mean by React abstracting some of this stuff away. All right. But yeah, let's follow your question for just a second. So app.js is the developer facing entry point for the app. Okay. But it's not the final end that's being output. So first of all, app.js is then imported by this other file that we haven't touched called index.js, right? And notice this import statement right here is bringing in the app file. Notice also that JS files, you don't need the .js extension right here, okay? So if that's confusing, if I did write JS right here, it would make absolutely no difference. Okay? So whenever you see a file name like this, it's either going to be a folder or it's a JavaScript file. And because we're writing in JavaScript, we can leave that out. Index.js actually has its own CSS file that's less extensive. And typically, you won't touch this file. You see, all this is it's wrapping our entire app in a React tag, okay, to make React work, all right? Then where does this go? Well, actually, this then gets fed out to a public HTML file. And this index.html file, which is the only HTML file in this entire project, right? This file right here pulls in, let's see if we can find it. You see how it says div ID root? That is referring to, or that's a reference to this, right? So this is saying basically render everything in the app inside of a React package. Render it to where? Render it to the root div, right? Look for an element that has an ID called root. Where is that element? It's here. And I can actually, this green text right here, this is all HTML commenting, and I can show you if I remove this, how short this file actually is. Okay. So this is actually the only web page file that's pointing out. So this right here, this page right here is what you are seeing here. And I can show you that because look at the title. Okay. Class number 1, right? If I change the title of that, it changes up here as the title of the web page. I know that's actually, look, that's right behind this live button on my screen. You probably can't even see that. Okay. And then the other thing it's doing in the body of the web page, all it's doing is providing an empty div with that element ID. Okay. And then it gives me this, it gives me an error message just in case a user doesn't have JavaScript, blah, blah, blah. Other questions?
I'm glad this is being recorded.
Dude, yeah, I know. It's that, everything I just said, it's impossible to like really embrace it the first time. Right. So this is good that you guys can go back to this and continue on these steps. We're at exactly an hour right now. Can I do one more thing, or are people feeling like that's capacity right now?
Good to go.
Yeah, let's do one more thing. Okay. So yeah, and this shouldn't take too long. I want to show you, based on everything we just did, I shouldn't have changed that. Yeah, let's leave that alone. This one, it's fine. Okay. A lot of what we just did to use data from inside of our app, we can use that same logic to grab data from outside. And that's done through API calls. Okay. So the two things we're going to do right now, one, Gimbal Labs is the name of the project that kind of comprises both Dandelion and Workshop Maybe. Okay, I could talk more about that relationship some other time. But we have this growing website here. I haven't done too much work styling it yet, but we do have some information up. You can see the previous starter kits. Can you imagine that I used a map function to make this page right here? Okay. We have the starter kits up. We've got Cole, who spent some ADA in Burlington. No, Max, don't worry about that. Seriously, that's great asking a question right there. And then over here, Cardano APIs. This is what Roberto is really focused on, is making these endpoints. And the reason he's making these is that there's a lot of overhead in setting up a Cardano development environment, right? To really get to production level. And what we're hoping is that by providing these, we can allow people to play with ideas, prototype things, without making the commitment to going all the way to like installing Cardano node and making sure they got DB Sync running. Have any of you tried to get DB Sync running? It's okay if you have. It's a bitch. I haven't been able to do it yet. Like it takes days, and then it just breaks unexpectedly. Like we're a long way from it being easy and mainstream for people to be able to just have a synced node running and be able to use it anytime. So anyway, that's why these things exist. We can look more at all of them as time goes by, but all I want to do right now is show you this one. This is a REST API, right, which allows us to perform SQL queries. We're going to talk more about what REST means. You're going to see some other APIs. I'm thinking 2 weeks from now, I'll show you how to build a really simple Postgres database. For now, just know that we can use essentially an HTTP URL to look at some data. Okay. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy and paste this web address into my browser bar, and let's see what we get. Zoom in, check it out. So all this endpoint gets me is, you recognize those curly brackets? Okay. You recognize these key value pairs. We've got the ID has a value of 15. Key has a value of 0. There's some JSON in this response inside of some curly brackets. There's the transaction ID on the blockchain that this is attached to, and then a hash right here. Okay. But this response is exactly the same format as this right here. It's just that it's all wrapped in an array as well, just in case there were multiple, like if I made multiple requests in one URL, it would be returned as an array of objects. Okay. But now that you've kind of seen how to use local data right here, the logic here isn't that much different. Okay. And in fact, all we're doing, this 15 in this URL right here, this is Roberto's stake pool. He was actually the 15th entry ever of metadata on the Cardano blockchain. So I'm kind of jealous that he got in the double digits right there. I didn't get in until a couple thousand entries later. But if you look here, I made starter kit number 4 on December 8th, and I put some metadata on the blockchain just to commemorate that, because that starter kit was about metadata. Okay. Now, what this is, I'm choosing to play with some inconsequential data right now, so that eventually we can move into more useful things. But just to show you how this works, I want to try to render this data right here to the page. Now, here's the problem, okay? First of all, I'm running this website right here on my local server, which is obviously going to be faster than pulling data from anywhere else in the world, right? This stuff is going to load first, and then it might be milliseconds later. It might not take very long, but it will take some amount of time for some request from elsewhere on the internet to get there. So, and this is actually the hardest part about dealing with API calls. It's not that it's hard to use them. It's that you have to be really careful with how do you time things so that the web page doesn't render all weird because this information showed up, a half a second before this information. So that's what I want to show you right now is how to deal with information that might be coming in an asynchronous fashion. There's a few different ways to do this, but also because I have a few different goals right now and I want to show you how to install another NPM module, I'm going to choose to use a package called Axios. Okay. So here's how this works. I'm going to open up my package.json file as well. All right. Understanding what package.json is, I've found is a really empowering moment for new developers. So I hope that this is exciting to kind of look under the hood and begin to understand what you're seeing here. Package.json, it's just like ideas.json. It's a file wrapped in curly brackets, and then it's a whole bunch of key and value pairs. Okay. One of the things we see in here are the dependencies on which our project is built. And so far, there's not that much here. It's mostly related to React. But when I go down here and I type npm install, right? npm install is the command that allows me to access the whole wide world of different packages that have been created in npm. Okay. And if I type Axios, actually, let me just type something that doesn't exist. Right. It just tells me, yeah, that's not in the NPM registry. Okay. So you can only type words that have actually been uploaded, right? This is, even though it can be hard to wrap your mind around the command line because we're so used to graphical user interfaces, but all you're doing when you type commands on the command line is the same thing you're doing when you click on something in an app store or on your desktop or whatever. Okay, so npm install, there's a program I want to download called Axios. Now, when I press enter, watch what happens here in my dependencies folder. Okay. So it just downloaded Axios. It gives me some messages about how that install went. And now in my package.json dependencies, I can see that Axios is installed. Okay. So if you're ever looking through somebody else's web-based project and you want to know how they accomplished what they did, one of the best places to start is by going into package.json and looking at what the dependencies are. All right. So anybody who comes to investigate my project will see, okay, he's using React as his front-end framework, and he's using Axios for his API calls. And by the way, the assignment this week is just to play with Bootstrap. Let's install that while we're here, okay? So npm install Bootstrap. This is not going to do anything yet because there's some documentation I have to cover in order to be able to use Bootstrap. But basically, Bootstrap helps with the styling of the page. And now that I've installed that, you can see that in my dependencies as well. All right, so now we have Axios. I installed it via npm install. I'm going to import it the very same way I imported ideas, okay? I'm going to say import Axios from, and in this case, it's an NPM package. I'm sure this is confusing right now, like why I'm just allowed to type Axios right here. But basically, the way these import statements work is that once you have a module installed and you have it listed as a dependency, you can just import that. Okay. And this word right here, this is actually a variable. I could write a capital or a lowercase. Okay. I'm going to keep it lowercase just because it's easier to type. Now, because we're short on time, for now, I'm just gonna model this for now. And then, you can review this, try it on your own, and bring questions about this next week. Okay. So I'm going to do a bunch of things here now, and then we can talk about it. Okay. So first of all, inside of React, chat. If I go over here to index.js, you'll see that I've already imported React into this project. But React actually comes with some optional methods that aren't installed by default and that you can choose to import only when you need them. So I'm actually going to do that right now. I'm going to import something from React called useEffect. From React. Okay. There's a lot to say about this. This is called a React hook, and it's a very powerful tool. For now, I'm going to show you what it does. And then over the next few weeks, we'll be able to kind of dig into what it's actually doing. Okay, so this is going to go above the return statement. So I'm building a JavaScript function called app. Everything about this function fits inside the curly brackets that start here and end way down here. Okay. The return statement, like I said, is what delivers the actual HTML up to the page. But before the return statement, we could do all sorts of things. Okay. We can write all sorts of JavaScript logic up here to make our page interactive or changing or iterating or whatever, okay? And this is where we make an API call. So, oops. There's Adam. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to type useEffect and... Oh man, as I type this, I realize there's so many things I'm doing that I'm going to need to explain eventually, okay? But again, this is just exposure. Basically, inside of these outer parentheses from here to here, I have a function that's like unnamed. It's called an arrow function that's going to take place inside of these curly brackets, okay? So I'm going to do a function, and everything else I place is going to go basically inside these brackets. I'm going to use Axios here. Just like I was able to, just like I was able to type ideas.map down here, right? I had an array called idea, and I could call a function on it. Up here, I have an Axios object. And Axios can do a whole bunch of different things. one of the things Axios can do is it can get information from somewhere else. Where do I want to get information from? Well, I want to get information from this right here. I want to try to figure out how to make this information look pretty on my web page. So I'm going to take this URL. I'm going to make it the parameter of this axios.get statement.
James, do you mind just posting that URL in chat too, please?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yep. And I got to that from gimballabs.com. So you can explore what else that thing can do. Okay. Remember, this is the part of the page that's going to load more slowly than the rest of my site, right? And so there's this element of waiting for it. Oh, and actually this needs to be in quotes. Okay. So yeah, get this. Okay. And then I'm going to use a .then statement. Basically, after you get this URL, then do what? Well, you're going to then do something else. And the way this works, fortunately, is that I can put a carriage return in here and it won't make any difference, okay, just to make it easier to read, okay? So get this, then do what? I like to make my opening and closing parentheses first. But then we're actually going to do another thing. We're going to operate a function on top of whatever response we get. The word response here is just a variable. You could use X or result or any word you want. Once we get this response, let's do a couple of things with it, okay? And actually, I was going to show you how to console.log, but I'm not going to spend time on that right now. I really should. I might come back to this if anybody wants to hang out for longer. But for now, I'm just going to show you how this works. So now I need to store this data somewhere. I need to give this data a value, okay? So let's do this. Let me set up a variable called, some data. And I know that I'm trying to get a string. So I'm just going to make some data equal to a blank empty string. Okay. And after this GET request is successful, I'm going to now change the value of some data so that it's equal to whatever response I get. Okay, and the reason I'm typing the word response right here is only because I chose to use the word response right here. I could have written result right here, and I would write result, or X and X, whatever. Okay, whatever response I got from that request, look at the data inside of it. Remember that this data was actually an array. You see those curly brackets there? Or sorry, the square brackets on the far outside. This is actually the 0 element in an array that only has one item in it. And which part of this array do I want? Or of the object do I want? I want the JSON part. That's the part that matters to me. I want to get this text right here, CSK004 from the December 8th. So I want the JSON part of that request. Let's see if this works. Once that happens, I should be able to, let's do this at the bottom of the page. Let's make it nice and big. I should be able to print some data to the page. Oh, come on, it let me do that? Oh, no, sorry, okay. Oh, you know what? I saved it, but look down here. I exited npm start. I exited my server. So there's actually nothing on the page right now if I reload because my server isn't running because I turned it off so that I could install Axios and Bootstrap. Let me turn it back on again. And it shouldn't work. It did. Wait a minute. Oh, it did. You know why? That's why. Oh, that's why. Look, did this work? It didn't work. It just printed the words some data. Okay. And the reason it printed those words is because those are exactly the words I wrote right here. In order to actually access this value as a variable and not as text, I need to put some data in curly brackets. Does that make sense? Now, if I save that, it's not working. And this is another one of those worst kind of errors where I can't tell why it's not working. All I can see is that it's not working, right? So again, I'm going to skip over some things here, but basically what we need to do is grab another React hook called useState. And instead of just setting it as a variable, I promise this is something that we're going to do again soon. But let me just make a variable called some data and set some data. This is a use state that, oh, is that a, that's the thing. No, it should be a string. Let's do that. And so instead of just trying to set the value of a variable, let's do it a little bit more elegantly. And we're going to set our data. I don't expect this part that I'm doing right now to make that much sense. Just consider this as immediate exposure, okay? And this is something you're going to come back to. It takes a while. Oh, sorry, Adam. Adam, you've been just sitting there in the gray. I'm sorry, dude. Let's see if this works better. Some data is now set to that. Let's try that. Save. It compiles and let's refresh here. There it is. Okay, so this data right here was pulled. This is live from the Cardano blockchain. Okay, I know it doesn't look special. There's nothing on the front end to tell us that it's special. Okay, but this is served from the chain, and you can find it there on a transaction. So that's where this is coming from. Okay, so that's a humble first access point to the chain. Obviously, there's a lot more we have to do, like figure out how to put information on the chain, figure out how to do actually useful things with it. But what I'm hoping is that tonight I gave you a kind of whirlwind tour of some basic building blocks and how we get those pieces to build together. Okay. Just for fun, while we're here, I'm sure that you've seen like loading screens on web pages, right? And loading screens are used when one or more API calls are being made, right? When you have information coming from your own company's data center and these other APIs everywhere, you're going to need a loading screen. Otherwise, it's just a terrible user experience to watch everything load up, right? This is happening really fast because I'm making a pretty simple response. But you can still see as I do this how that line does flash on the page. Can you see that split second right there, right? So this is a case where maybe we would want some kind of loading screen. So I'm not actually going to design the screen, but I am going to show you how to set this up, okay? So I'm going to make another use state hook. In the line above, the state was a string, but this one is actually going to be a Boolean, a true or a false value, okay? And loading is going to be set to true initially, right? Because when a page first opens up, yes, it is loading. Okay, but after it's done loading, it's going to, we want to set loading equal to false when the load is done, right? Then what I'm able to do down here is, instead of just serving up some data, this is what JSX can do. I can say loading and then a question mark. And if it is loading, I'll write, let's say I'll just write the word loading. How's that? And then otherwise, we put some data on the page. Let's see if the word loading flashes for a second. Ready? You see it? Okay. Now, even that might not feel like a great user experience because of how quickly it flashes, right? Some people actually like to spend that Zen moment of loading. So let's give it to them. What we can do is we can actually use set timeout, which is the clocking function inside of JavaScript. Here's another anonymous arrow function, just like you saw up here. So this is a structure you're going to start to see a lot. Okay. And then inside of that, let's bring set loading inside of there. And then this is measured in milliseconds. So if I type the number 1,000 right here, it's going to take 1 second to load. And what this means is, no matter when this response shows up, it's going to wait 1 second before it sets loading equal to false. And my experience is that this actually makes for a better user experience. Watch. Okay. That kind of felt like the pace you want, right? And if you think it looks cool to have a spinning wheel for like 3 seconds, right? All you would need to do is set this number to 3,000. And instead of the word loading right here, you could load up a little GIF image of a spinning wheel, right? And then when we load the page, the wheel's going to spin for 3 seconds. And then finally, the information is rendered to the page, okay? All right, that took 88 minutes to get through what I hoped would be an hour. Not bad, but I did do a shitload of talking, and I appreciate you guys for bearing with me there. How's everybody feeling?
Good, man. It was great. Definitely.
Yeah, hit me. So, I mean, obviously no rules. I'll stick around for as long as anybody wants to kind of talk through anything we got going on here. And this is going to get easier and more fun, both as we get to know each other and get more comfortable with each other, but also like, you know, this first one, I just kind of wanted to go like as heavy as possible. And obviously we've barely scratched the surface, but I hope I gave everybody kind of some things to think about, right? And some reference points. So as you start learning, you can do some of this. On the dashboard that we're using, down here, I wrote a follow-up assignment. I think if you really want to go deep into this, try to accomplish at least this much, okay? Play with what happens, when you just type like other numbers here. Like, you know, this number is kind of meaningless. This number, all this number is the index of the metadata transactions. But just like you can type random other numbers and see what kind of data shows up. Whoever that, right? So like here's just other people putting stuff on the blockchain. And if I just change that index, we can see it. So that's kind of fun. But oh, look at that. I got the object error. Anyway, we'll save that for a different time. Basically, if you can do everything I just showed you there, by like a combination of that video and this outline right here, then try styling it, okay? Try using Bootstrap. I showed you really quickly how to install Bootstrap with just npm install. because we're using Create React app, you can go to the documentation here, and this will show you how you have to go into the index.js file and add this import line. Okay, I would grab it here. I would go into index.js, and I would add that line above index.css. Actually, this is probably going to change if I go back. Just by doing that one thing. Notice how the font is a little bit different now, maybe. That's because I now added Bootstrap to this project. But I totally recommend familiarizing yourself with what Bootstrap is. You're going to have version 4.5. So when you go into the documentation and start learning about it, just make sure you're on version 4.5. And tape is still rolling right here. So that's why I'm speaking quickly. I know you'll just be able to follow up with this, and we'll put a timestamp for everybody to look at. Okay. Best way to reach me directly would be to join the Gimbal Labs Discord. Is that okay? Oh shit! I just. Damn. Oh, good. We're good. Anyway. I've found that Discord helps me organize my thoughts better than some other tools just because things are organized in channels. So I'll show this to you. We've got a recent picture of the dude in our Discord. Perfect. Okay. This is Gimbal Labs. There's a few different things here, but I made a channel here for the dev course. I don't know where y'all are at on this. Like if you have too many communication tools already, we could also just do this in the Facebook group. But one of the reasons I like inviting you guys to this channel is that this is going to increase our chances of kind of cross-pollinating with other people who are building other stuff. And I really like that idea. So here, let me invite everybody. If anybody's against using Discord, absolutely no problem. Just please tell me, and we will figure out a better way. But I've this is the best way I found to work. What else? I know it might be hard to have immediate questions right now. Does anybody have any really sticky points or just things you're wondering about, bigger picture?
Yeah. So is communication via the blockchain done mainly through APIs?
Such a good question, dude. Okay, so
Eventually.
It really depends. Yeah, it really depends. I mean, and then obviously talking about Cardano right now, we're talking about a tool that's not completely rolled out, right? What's an example? Get more specific. Like what's when you think about communication, what do you mean?
Sorry, I was on mute. So I was playing around in the Marlowe playground today, and I love the concept of the low code, no code. But the concern I had was parameterization and how I'm thinking one person isn't going to want to develop 100 smart contracts a day in order to satisfy client needs. So there has to be a way to automate it. What would be the way to communicate with Marlowe or Haskell or Plutus? And I guess what is the most granular way that we could take control of every aspect of this smart contract?
You're saying, well, so in this case, you're saying build a script that creates contracts on demand as needed?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be really exciting. and one thing this is one of those, like, there's so many like little revolutionary things about Cardano that here, I'm gonna turn off the live stream.